we're going to talk about compulsive behaviors. Lots of compulsive behaviors out there. A compulsive behavior would be considered anything that is repetitive, a behavior that's repetitive, that the individual appears not to have any control over. Something would be compulsive if you couldn't stop gambling, if you couldn't stop shopping, if you compulsively set fires. And of course, fires are really kind of dangerous. One of the things we have discovered is people that are suffering from antisocial personality disorder, people that are psychopaths, people that are sociopaths. These individuals have a history of fire setting. They enjoy burning things. They enjoy destroying things with fire, as odd as that sounds. And these individuals, we see this from childhood. From childhood. So these individuals have been fire setters all of their lives. They also, of course, the other two things, one is bedwetting, which is neither here nor there, but the other one is torturing small animals. So whereas normally, if you are confronted with a puppy or a kitten or a baby, it makes you want to pick them up and cuddle them. These individuals, it makes them want to pick them up and torture them. Which is completely alien to what the feelings that they should be getting. These individuals, there's two categories of impulsive control disorders. One is compulsive gambling, and the other is hair pulling. We have impulse control disorders and compulsive disorders. So compulsive gambling and hair pulling would be impulse control disorders. And compulsive disorders will have their own classification. These include overeating. Some people compulsively overeat. Shoplifting, sexual behavior, internet use. They can't get off the internet. I'm starting to worry about my wife. She's on Facebook all the time. She told me yesterday. I talked to her yesterday. When I was, should have been doing something else. Anyway, I was talking to her on the telephone, or should have been doing, anyway, she told me that she's going to get off Facebook. She said that she's getting too engaged. She's really upset with President Trump, and she's really upset about some of the things that happened, the fact that he is so obviously a womanizer. That really upset her because she was one of the first female colonels in the United States Air Force, and so she had to break down all these barriers. So she is she's a fairly strong feminist, and for that reason she wanted to see Hillary Clinton elected president, of course. But now she's watching things. She was sure after the election that something had happened, something that wasn't supposed to have happened. And it turned out to be the Russian collusion. So she's almost obsessed with it, with the Russian collusion. But she has been on Facebook with all of these individuals that are Trumpians, are individuals that agree with Donald Trump, and she does a lot of arguing back and forth. And she says she's just going to get off that aspect of Facebook. She's still going to watch CNN. She's still going to listen to Trevor Noah and John Oliver, but she's not going, and Rachel Maddow, but she's not going to be as obsessed with changing the political climate as she was before. She's still going to, she has never been political. In the military, you're not allowed to be political. You're not allowed to even talk about politics. So she's never been political, but now, of course, she's going to start. She's going to start campaigning for people. She was thinking of running for office, but of course she has hip problems. Now we know that she has hip problems. So she's going to have hip surgery. We'll see what happens next. Anyway, so the internet use, watching television, I have this problem. When I go home at night, I will turn on the television and I won't turn it off until it's time to go to bed. It's really hard for me not to be watching television. It takes up a lot of my time. As sad as that is, I know that's sad. On Saturday, last Saturday, I was planning on grading last Saturday, And instead, I just turned on the television and watched crap. Watched just garbage on television. And I can't even tell you what I watched. It was so bad. But I didn't get any work done, and I didn't start working until Sunday. So it's my fault. I have a compulsive behavior when I watch too much television. Pathological lying, of course, is another problem, another compulsive problem. Shoplifting can be a compulsive problem. Who do we know that's a shoplifter? What was her name? An actress. She was in Beetlejuice. She was the young girl with black hair.
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
I can't think of her name. Anyway, she got caught shoplifting. Well, the lady's got millions and millions of dollars. Why in the world would she shoplift? It's compulsive behavior, unfortunately. And fire setting is another compulsive behavior. Impulse control disorders are actions that may be pleasurable in the beginning, but as the attempt to resist the impulse continues, becomes harmful to the individual or others. This disorder also has accompanying tension or arousal before the act is committed. After culmination of the act, the individual often feels gratification, pleasure, relief, and then possibly remorse and guilt for not controlling the behavior. Obsessive compulsive disorder is a repetitive activity where the goal is to reduce anxiety or distress caused by obsessive thoughts. The goal is rarely to provide pleasure or gratification and includes compulsive hand washing, checking things, ordering, counting, and praying. Some people compulsively pray, obsessively pray, and this can be a problem. It's not that they're trying to make themselves feel better, they're trying to reduce the tension. So it's actually an unpleasant act for them. They just have to do it, as interesting as that is. You would think that they would enjoy it, and that's why they're doing something over and over again. If I watch television, it's because I enjoy it. What did I watch last night? Oh, I Love You, Beth Cooper. I watched it again. I keep watching that show. I'm obsessed with it.
My grandpa is like that, but his is on Jerry Springer.
Jerry Springer? Jerry Springer. See, my son was on Jerry Springer once.
What?
Yeah. My son was on Jerry Springer. It turns out that those guys are actors. My son was an actor. And he was supposed to be a gay man who, he was a gay man who was jealous of his boyfriend. I know. Of course, my son's not gay, but
I'm pretty sure.
I've never seen the show. I don't. He made the film, but I don't know if it ever aired. It may not have ever aired.
All the fighting and whatnot looks real, but
my son is buff. So yeah, they have.
Sadly, I used to watch that show because of Steve, who was a security guard on.
Oh really? You like the security guard?
But now he has his own show, so I don't watch Jerry Springer no more. I watch his show.
So what happens on his show? The same thing?
Not fighting. He's kind of like he tries to help people with their problems instead of letting them battle it out.
Well, don't feel odd if you understand that, or don't feel bad that they're all actors and none of that stuff is real.
Actually,
Not a surprise to you?
yeah.
Yeah, okay. It's all scripted, okay? Compulsive behaviors are engaged in for the same reason people compulsively use addictive drugs. They get an instant rush from it, they forget their problems, they control anxiety, they oblige friends, they potentially may be self-medicating. These individuals are trying to alter their mood and change their state of consciousness. MRIs show that the same areas of the brain are activated when compulsive behavior is done as when drug use is anticipated or done. Some people like to go shopping and they get this rush, they get this blast from shopping, and they'll spend all day wandering through Walmart looking at all the deals. They'll spend hours looking at all the deals. If I go to Walmart, I buy exactly what I need, and I'm trying to get past all these people that are just kind of wandering around and picking things up. Because the problem with Walmart is the aisles are just barely big enough for two people to get through. So if that person has their cart, it's not completely over on the side, I can't get past it. That's the problem with Walmart. Why is that a good business strategy? To have slender aisles that only two people can get through. Why is that a good business strategy? Walmart, the people that own Walmart are the richest people in the world. If we put them all together, all the Waltons are they're 5 of the 10 richest people in the world. So if we put them all together, they're the richest person in the world. So why is that a good business strategy, to have small aisles?
Trying to get the customers to see what's closer to them as far as what's on the shelves.
Yeah, so when I'm standing there waiting for this person to get out of my way, I'm looking at the shelves and I'm more likely to pick something up. Compulsive buying, exactly. At least you understand. Do you go to Walmart? Okay. So you understand what they're trying to do to you. Okay. Do you do it? Do they fool you? Do you buy things compulsively? See, you're so smart. Good job, Edison. Compulsive behaviors. Compulsive users are compulsive about their drug use. They develop a tolerance for their drug. They have withdrawal symptoms after abstinence. They continue to use despite adverse consequences. They are in denial about their usage. They have a strong tendency to relapse. Compulsive gamblers, how do they compare? They gamble compulsively. They increase the bet amount when they are gambling compulsively. Sometimes they'll gamble, and it's not compulsive gambling. When they are there to make money, then they will not gamble compulsively. They'll control their bets. But when they are gambling compulsively, they're gambling for a good time. They're gambling to dissipate the tension. They will bet more and more and more. And this is one of the ways that professional gamblers, they make their money off of these individuals that are compulsive gamblers, because they will try to bluff. They will increase the pot to an amazing extent. And that's how they make their money. And they can, of course, read the compulsive gamblers anyway. They know exactly who they are, and they know exactly why they're there. They are there to lose their money. They are there to gamble until all their money is gone. The compulsive gamblers. They become restless when not gambling. They go through withdrawal. They continue gambling until they have used all of their money. So they will lose that money. If they continue to win, they get agitated. And they will start increasing the pots. They'll try to bluff. And the reason they're trying to bluff is they need to lose all that money. They have this compulsive need to gamble, and the compulsion will not go away until they don't have any money anymore. They think that they can control their gambling and refuse to see the consequences. They are in denial. They will relapse whenever they have money, when they have money again, of course, and then they'll try to lose all that money. That's one of the reasons why the shooter in Las Vegas, he's called himself a professional gambler. He made millions and millions of dollars, and he gambled it all away. This man was not sitting there with billions and billions of dollars. He was sitting there with millions of dollars. Why? Because he would bet $1 million a night. Sometimes he was compulsive gambling, trying to lose. Sometimes he was gambling to make money, just to stay alive. And for some reason, of course, he decided he was going to shoot up a concert. One telling sign is that organizations like Gamblers Anonymous and Overeaters Anonymous use a 12-step program identical to the 12-step program set up by Alcoholics Anonymous. Addictive behavior involves a lack of individual control, and these organizations demonstrate the necessity to change their lifestyle and their beliefs. Compulsive behavior can be triggered by various factors: genetic predisposition for the compulsive behavior, environmental stress, the repetitive behavior itself, substance abusers, compulsive gamblers, compulsive overeaters, and compulsive shoppers all show the same dopamine increase in the brain. I knew a family one time, and they had this compulsive behavior, and one of them they were all addicts of one kind or another. There were a couple of them that were drug addicts. One was a shopaholic. One was a gambler. And it was really kind of weird being around this family because who did they marry? Well, they married other people with compulsions. So you would have a husband and wife that were, one was a gambler and the other was would go to flea markets for deals. She was kind of a shopaholic, but she would pick through everything. Oh, she's drove you nuts. So you would be around these individuals and they would be talking back and forth, and it sounded like they were talking about the same thing, but each of them were talking about their own compulsions. It was just fascinating to listen to the drug addicts, and they were saying, you know, I can't stop, and I can't do this, and I have to do that. And then the gambler would go, you know, I can't stop. I have to do this and I have to do that. I mean, they were using exactly the same words. And it was a genetic thing. It was the whole damn family.
They're like, oh yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know. I do the same thing with gambling. No, you don't, man. You don't understand my problems. You know, they would have these arguments back and forth where somebody didn't understand their shopping addiction, and somebody didn't understand their gambling addiction, and somebody didn't understand their cocaine addiction. It was just stupid. And they all smoked pot. Every single one of them smoked pot. And
What about intensive house cleaning?
obsessive compulsive behavior, sure. Yeah, that's a compulsion as well. Substance abusers, compulsive gamblers, compulsive overeaters, and compulsive shoppers all show the same dopamine increase in the brain. So we see exactly the same thing in these select individuals. Compulsive behavior does seem to run in families. Binge overeating has been shown to have a relationship with overactive serotonin receptors, 5-HT serotonin receptors. Twin studies support the strength of genetic factors leading to obesity. These connections were stronger than shared environmental pressures. Studies of adopted children supported the strength of genetic influences, where such environmental factors as frequency and volume of meals, amount of snack food in the house, and the level of exercise was less significant than heredity toward obesity. So the amount of food in the house wasn't the important thing. It was the fact that they had this hereditary proclivity to do this. Researchers have found a marker gene that shows a strong proclivity for addictive behavior, especially alcoholism. And we talk about this all the time. The DRD2A1 allele. DRD2A1. So we see, well, as you can see, for non-alcoholics, the percentage of individuals with this DRD2A1 allele is 19 to 21%. So if it's 1 out of every 5 people. So if we wander around, we're going to find 1 out of every 5 people have this allele. So they have an addictive personality. They are more likely to do something compulsive. And this is one of the reasons why I keep telling everybody that I'm so boring. I'm boring, right? And I've had ex-wives tell me how boring I was. I've had current wives tell me how boring I am. But the reality is, I don't have this DRD2A1 allele. I just don't have it. So, you know, I got drunk a couple times and I didn't like it, so I didn't do it anymore. But somebody with the DRD2A1 allele, they get drunk a couple times and now they can't stop doing it. They have to do it. They have to drive fast. They have to shop. They have to do something. They have to do something to fulfill this DRD2A1 allele. And I'll explain to you why in just a second. 69% of alcoholics have this allele, whereas only 20% of the population have it. 45% of compulsive overeaters have this allele. 48% of smokers have this allele. 52% of cocaine addicts. 51% of pathological gamblers. 76% of pathological gamblers with drug problems have this allele. 45% of people with Tourette's syndrome have it. 49% of children with ADHD have DRD2A1 allele. It is speculated that these individuals that have this gene have a deficiency of dopamine receptor sites, and therefore they must seek excessive stimulation to force extra dopamine to be released in the reward reinforcement pathway to feel normal. They can only feel normal with extreme stimulation. Whereas I feel good with very little stimulation. That's what makes me so boring. My problem was I married 2 women with the DRD2A1 allele. That was my problem. They were exciting. They did things. They needed to do things because in order for them to be stimulated, they needed extreme stimulation of one kind or another. That's why I was so boring to them. Since their normal is less stimulating, stimulation allows them to feel pleasure. So it has to be stimulated. They have to be stimulated to feel pleasure. They never wanted to just sit there and talk. Talking was boring to them. They needed something to happen. If you sat down with them, they would attack you and suck face because you couldn't just have a conversation with them. They didn't want to talk. And that was, I know.
Maybe I don't have that.
You don't have this need to suck face every time you sit down with somebody? They did. They did. Well, of course, then they got into trouble.
I mean, mine was the same way with drinking and, of course, drugs.
Okay.
Once it made me feel yucky, I stopped.
Sure. But now you don't need that. No. So you don't have that DRD2A1 allele. It's not there. You were probably doing it because other people were doing it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But my mom is the opposite.
So she probably has the DRD2A1 allele. 20% of the population have it. Compulsive gambling may be triggered by the plethora of venues of gambling, state lotteries, poker machines, internet betting, legal off-track betting, casinos on every corner. Individuals, when that Mega Millions thing gets up to $57 million or $146 million, do you feel the need to have to buy a ticket? Do you have to buy a ticket?
My mom does.
Okay, of course your mom does. She has the DRD2A1 allele. But if you don't have that feeling, if you don't have that need, oh, I might win $157 million. The probability is only 1 in 250 million. I can do it. I can be that one guy. No, you can't. It ain't going to happen. You're just throwing your money away. You're giving your money to somebody. And of course, that's what casinos are all about. That's why Donald Trump is a billionaire, because he owned casinos. And he would scrape off everything as a profit. And unfortunately, most of his casinos have closed. And the reason that they have closed is because he was sucking off too much money. Too much of the profits. He wasn't putting any of the money back to maintain the places. And that's why he has billions of dollars, and those places went under. They went under because he took too much money away from them. Even though they were making billions and billions of dollars, he was taking that billions and billions of dollars and putting it into something else, rather than maintaining the casino. Compulsive overeating may be triggered by the plethora of fast food restaurants. Of course, we don't have to worry about that in Chinle because there's what? Churches, chicken, and then there's the
Mexican person?
Burger King. Is there a Mexican place in Chinle?
Or Chinese?
Chinese, the Chinese restaurant. Yeah, that's about.
And also the restaurants.
Oh,
3 different restaurants.
but are they fast foods?
No, I
Not
think just
really. Denny's, but Denny's is slow.
probably churches.
Churches, Burger King,
Chinese
and the
place.
Chinese place.
And Burger King.
Yeah, that's about it. So if you lived in Albuquerque or Gallup, of course, you can drive that one street. What is it? 60? It used to be 666. Highway 666. Anyway, if you drive that street, there's Wendy's and McDonald's and Sonic and Blake's is around the corner, and there's a Carl's Jr. around the corner. I mean, anything that you want, you could go to a different place every night.
That was how it was for me in Vegas.
There you go. Wendy's. Yeah, you can eat anything that you want. Lack of daily physical activity may trigger your overeating. Fats and sugars in the foods that induce craving. Parents overfeeding their children. Chaotic childhoods that lead people to use food to relieve their depression. This is conditioned for you. This would be conditioned for somebody. They would overeat in order to make themselves feel better because their childhood was chaotic. So if you talk to somebody, you never know what they're going to say. But that piece of toast and with the jelly on it is always the same. It's always going to be the same. So where do you look for sucre? Where do you look for normality? Not in your family because you never know what's going to happen next. But that food is always exactly the same. Compulsive sexual activity may be triggered by a plethora of sexual situations depicted on television, latchkey kids with no supervision, and I'll tell you what, the kids do know more about computers than you do. So if you think that you block them from looking at whatever site that they want to look at, you're probably incorrect because they know more about that computer than you do. Children with no close emotional family connections are more likely to look for a connection with somebody on the internet or something on the internet. And abundance of internet pornography, of course, and there is just a ton of it out there. You can't type something into Google, you take your search safety search off, you can type anything in there and you're going to get something that is relatively pornographic. And it will come up with baby carriages, and all of a sudden, you know, you get a page of pictures that are baby carriages, and then the 146th picture is a picture of a lady having sex in a baby carriage. Oh my God! In some strange and interesting position. Compulsive internet use may be triggered by expanding network of games, massive multiplayer online role-playing games. Dedicated gamers will play online for an average of 8 hours a day. Only 8 hours a day? Is that all? I've known people that would stay up for 72 straight hours to play. I know. It's Tiffany, she's admitting that she did this in the past. 8 hours, this is the average, 8 hours a day. You go home, you think, I'm going to do my homework. So you go, I'll just play for a couple minutes. And you get online and all of a sudden, it's 8 o'clock the next morning. You have to go to class. You've been playing all night long. Expanding networks of online gaming, expanded networks of chat rooms, online gambling, I'm sorry. Anyway, compulsive shopping may be triggered by the ease of getting credit, a materialistic view of life. It isn't who you are, but what you have as to what makes you important. A barrage of advertisements on TV, catalogs, 24-hour shopping networks, internet shopping, internet auction sites. If you have Amazon Prime, isn't that what it is, Amazon Prime? You can find something that you want, you can click on one thing, and you just bought that sucker. It's yours. And it's going to get there tomorrow. Wow. You don't have to go to Gallup. You don't have to go to Albuquerque. You can get something tomorrow. Well, not here. It usually takes 2 or 3 days to get here. But, I mean, with Amazon Prime, geez, you just click on one thing and it's bought. You can imagine how frequently that happens. My wife buys a lot of things on Amazon. I hardly ever buy anything. I give money away, but I don't buy things. And I keep telling my wife. My wife thinks that I'm buying things. I don't really buy things, I just give my money away. She doesn't like that. It has been observed that there is a history of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse in the lives of many of the individuals who suffer from compulsive behaviors. So something has happened to them in their lives, and in order to make their life normal, they have had to grab a hold of something. And now that something that has been saving them all their lives has become a compulsion for them. And this is what they do. My life is a mess, so what do? I watch television all night. I immerse myself in Friends, that television show Friends. You know the old television show. I immerse myself in criminal shows. My wife has done that.
I love it.
Criminal Minds was her favorite show. Started scaring her. It started scaring her because she was watching things that would upset her, and she wasn't getting upset anymore. And she realized it was changing her personality. So she stopped watching Criminal Minds. Criminal Minds is pretty bad. I mean, some of that stuff is really nasty. Some of that stuff disturbs me, and I've been through that stuff over and over and over again in the emergency room. And working with the police. And some of that stuff bothers me.
Mine's long.
And I don't know why anybody needs to watch that stuff. Why do you need to watch this stuff? Why do you want to feel bad? That's the part that bothers me. When I was working with this stuff, and they were coming into my emergency room, I was going, I was dealing with it. I was going, okay, well, it's just another crazy person, and they've done some other crazy thing to this kid, and they cut the baby's leg off. And this kind of stuff happens. But I don't know why you want to see it over and over and over again on television. The other problem is, when they come into the emergency room, you've got what they look like, you've got what they smell like. I mean, you're interacting with everything that's going on. But when you watch it on television, you don't see any, you don't see the blood, not the real blood. You don't smell anything. And there's nobody screaming in the background, probably, on television, because that would be too scary. They wouldn't be able to put it on television. The real stuff is heavy. And I just don't understand why my wife wants to see it. Not only that, but it's a watered down version of what it really is. Anyway. What am I talking about? Oh, compulsive behavior. Engaging in behavior can lead to compulsive behavior. A big payday when gambling. Eater takes in excess sugar and fat and changes the body's chemistry. Now they eat to be happy, of course. Being able to buy something that the individual wants makes them shop with the anticipation that they will find another coveted item. And of course, once they buy that item, what happens? Now they have a big letdown, and they don't feel, now they're depressed because they have found what they were looking for. Participation in ritualized masturbation, compulsive viewing of pornography, or anticipation in other compulsive sexual behaviors will make the individual avoid normal sexual behavior or emotional relationships. If you understand what's going on with people that snort cocaine, cocaine is an aphrodisiac. It is an aphrodisiac in the beginning, but then now they need that cocaine in order to have any sexual relations at all. And it takes away your desire to have sex. So now all of a sudden, in order to have sex, they have to up the ante by becoming violent or doing this or doing that or the other. And that potentially is what 50 Shades of Grey is about. It's about a man that can do anything he wants to a woman because he's so wealthy, so he tortures them because he uses this, and since he has no normal sexual feelings anymore, he has to do these horrible things to these women in order just to have become sexually aroused. And that's what happens with people that snort cocaine. In the beginning, it really is an aphrodisiac. But the more you use it, now all of a sudden it's not working as an aphrodisiac anymore, and it has to become more and more extreme. The sex has to become more and more extreme. Anyway, okay. I want you to understand that because you're potentially going to be dealing with people in the future. One of the things that I see happening in not the near future, but who knows when it's going to happen. But one of the things that you may potentially see is individuals that this compulsive behavior because of the internet, they can do whatever they want to do over an extended length of time for an extended length of time. And of course, they're going to be at the extreme. And that's what you're going to have to be dealing with. We don't see that so much anymore, or we don't see that now. We are seeing it with select middle-aged individuals, with teenagers. I mean, what sense does it make for a teenager to use a erectile dysfunction medication? Why in the world would they do that? These guys are a walking erection anyway, and here they're using Viagra? Well, that doesn't make any sense. It's not really for them, but they're using this stuff. So what's going to happen to these individuals in the future? What's going to happen to them is they're going to lose their normal sexual function. Now they have to use Viagra. And now Viagra's not going to work. So they're going to have to double the dosage. They're going to have to do something else. They're going to have to find some way to have normal sexual relations. This is what the future is going to look like. And this is what you guys are going to have to deal with. It's something that we can't even fathom. And these extremes are the things that you're going to have to be dealing with in the future. You're going to have to deal with it. I'm going to be dead, so you guys are going to have to be dealing with it. You can call me up on the telephone if I'm still alive. I'll go, really? You saw that? Oh my God. Well, I don't know what I would do. Geez, let me think about it for a second. That's what I'm going to say. You think I'm cool? You're going to call me on the phone and talk about all this crazy stuff. Right? Geez, I've got a guy that comes in and he uses the F word. I mean, it's like every word. And I have to try to understand what he's saying. But I can't understand what he's saying because like every other word. And I can't get past this word because he uses it. You think I'm kidding. You may know somebody that every other word is the F word. I don't have to deal with it. You guys have to deal with it. All right, just a thought. Compulsive gambling has skyrocketed in the last decade with poker tournaments being shown on television and online gambling available. Not as popular now as it used to be. ESPN had a channel for poker, as stupid as that sounds. Texas Hold'em, whatever Texas Hold'em is. Anyway, they used to show the stuff on television, and they had tournaments? Who does this stuff? Really? Poker? Come on, that's something you play in somebody's garage on a select night, and then you apologize to your wife all
day. Like one of them two?
I'm sorry?
Billiards? You can't say it. Pool.
Pool. Oh, billiards.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was talking to Marius. He was saying, yeah, everybody on the reservation plays pool. Really? Does everybody play pool? I had no idea. Evidently, he's really good. Marius is. Don't ever play against him. Yeah, he's really, really good.
I'll take that challenge.
Okay, there you go. Well, good luck. I hope that you do well.
I got tricks.
Okay, you got tricks. Okay. Last year, gambling revenues in the United States topped $75 billion. Last year, gambling revenues worldwide topped $125 billion. And of course, there are places that you can go to gamble. Las Vegas, for example. Why did you go to Las Vegas?
I don't know. I was 17.
Okay. Atlantic City used to be the gambling destination on the East Coast. It's right beside New York. It's just down from New York, so it was very easy to jump on the train and go to Atlantic City to gamble. Not so much anymore. Donald Trump thought he was going to change. He was going to buy out Atlantic City. It didn't work. Gamblers Anonymous defines gambling as any betting or wagering for self or others, whether for money or not. Doesn't have to be for money, no matter how slight or insignificant. Whether the outcome is uncertain or depends upon chance or skill constitutes gambling. So anything, just about anything can be gambling. Forms of gambling: casino-style gambling, poker, blackjack, craps, roulette, slot machines, video poker machines, and of course the Las Vegas shooter was a video poker machine player. And he would play all night long, and he would bet as much as $1 million. Horse and dog racing, highlight, bingo and raffles, state-run lotteries and keno, sports betting, both legal and illegal, Super Bowl office pools and betting on golf, schoolyard games, lag pennies and flip coins, if you've ever done that, bar games, liar's dice, which I'm not exactly sure what it is, stock speculation such as day trading, commodities, and options, and of course internet gambling. And these are all compulsive behaviors that people have. My daughter's baby daddy, I'd like to call him her boyfriend, but he never was much of a boyfriend. Anyway, he was a day trader, and he was making, he's making six figures every year. And he would work for 6 months, and he would party for 6 months. He would go to Thailand for 6 months. Yeah, and rack out for 6 months. Or he'd go to Sri Lanka, or he would go to Costa Rica. He went to all of these destination places while he was a day trader. Well, during the Bush administration, the stock market collapsed, like in 2007. The stock market just tanked. And these guys were out of a job. So these guys that were playing around with millions and millions of millions and millions of dollars of other individuals' money, all of a sudden they didn't have anything to do. And at that point he got bored, and that's when he impregnated my daughter. She didn't even know him when he was a day trader, when he was on top of the world. She knew him as the guy that he became after he lost all that money and lost his job. He saved absolutely nothing. Lived in his mother's house for free, of course. and he didn't do anything. He refused to do anything because this man, how could he work for pennies when he was making, $10,000 a day? How could he possibly do that? And he couldn't, and that was the answer. He couldn't do it. So she took care of it. She was teaching school and she took care of it. He has finally grown out of it. So don't feel bad about the guy. He has finally recovered. He doesn't. He has a job. He works in IT. But I was talking to him. I hate to talk to the guy because he's a jerk. But I was talking to him the other day, and he was saying that as soon as he gets his master's degree in computer technology, he's going to be making six figures again. That's what he told me. He's going to be making six figures again. And he doesn't talk in thousands. He doesn't talk in 10,000s. He talks in six figures. Okay.
That's what happens to a lot of people around my age. Like well, a little bit older than me, but like when I graduated from high school, that's when, it was right before the stock market crash.
Right.
So there
were
was a lot
gonna
of
be day
jobs
traders.
for welding, construction, and for bank loaners and
Sure.
for home loaners and everything. So I was working at that time, but right when I decided to go back to school, that right after.
Right after the stock market exploded. Yeah.
I have a lot of my friends, they're all making good money, and all of a sudden they're broke.
Driving around BMWs and they don't have any money to put gas in their car.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sad. Gambling has been around since the dawn of man. My dad was a banker, and of course my dad, that makes him relatively conservative with money. So over the 45 years he worked at the bank, he accumulated stock. He was accumulating bank stock, and he was sitting on about $1 million, and it wasn't very much. I mean, he slowly accumulated all this money. Of course, while he was accumulating this tiny pile of money, we were wearing hand-me-downs, but that's okay. It's not that big a deal. There were a lot of us in the family, so it was okay. But he accumulated about $1 million worth of stock, and when the stock market crashed, he was sitting on about $1.5 million, and it went down to about $500,000 real quick. Of course, I mean, it was money that we didn't even know about. It's just a pile of money sitting over. So when he died, we didn't even think anything about it. We didn't go, oh my God, if this had happened in 2006, we'd have $300,000 apiece, that kind of thing, because we didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, there was a house in California, it was worth about $400,000. But after all that happened, and when it came about time to sell it, it was only worth $180,000 or something. And in Southern California, an hour from the beach.
Oh man! So now it's worth what?
It's probably worth a lot more now.
Yeah, but it's probably worth $300,000.
I think it was around 300 now.
Gambling has been around since the dawn of man. Gambling bones have been found in human habitation sites that date back 40,000 years. This was not an old world phenomenon. Mayan digs have found gambling implements that closely resemble the dice in the bones of other civilizations. We're finding out more and more things about the indigenous peoples of the Americas. The Mayan culture we have found, we're doing a new type of surveying now, where it's above the ground, and what we're doing is we're looking through the vegetation, out through the jungles, and what we've discovered is that the Mayan world was much larger than we thought it was. The estimations used to be that maybe it was 100,000 people had lived in the Mayan world, and all of these city-states were fighting against each other. Now we know that they were all pretty much interconnected, and there may have been as many as 10 million Mayans. So we're finding a lot of new information. One of the problems is, as indigenous peoples, you don't want the anthropologists looking through your skeletons. You really don't want that to happen. But of course, when they do, they find different things. They find that things are different. So it's really kind of an argument between will you allow people to do research or will you not allow people to do research? And of course, well, you guys are psychologists, and one of the things that you have to talk about is doing research, psychological research on the reservation. I actually lost my job at Fort Belknap because I did research that they didn't want.
That's a question I have. Like out here, you have to go through the IRB process.
Right.
When you do, it seems to me like they really filter out research that are like psychological, relates to psychological, because they feel like it's triggering, or they'll trigger.
That's a good point. That's an excellent point. You were right.
But like, how do you research that?
You don't. You can't. If they won't allow you to do it, you can't do it. So how in the world are you going to find this information? When I decided to do research, of course everybody was talking about, oh, look at the alcohol problem we have on the reservation. Look at the abuse problem we have on the reservation. Look at the drug problem we have on the reservation. And I decided that these were really nice people, and they were really strong people. And so I decided, instead of talking about how up they are, how bad they are, well, the problems that they have, I thought, well, let's talk about something positive about these individuals. Most of my friends were recovered alcoholics or recovered drug addicts. And I said, well, why don't we look at their resilience? That makes a lot of sense. And that's what I got in trouble for. I was doing something positive. I was looking at something positive. The reason they didn't want me to do it was, first of all, they were afraid that it wouldn't be positive. They were afraid that it was just one more negative thing that people would say about American Indians. Well, they don't have any resilience. And they're not only alcoholics and drug addicts, and there's a lot of abuse on the reservation, but they don't have any resilience. And they would have my piece of research to prove that. Of course, that's not what my research said. My research said the opposite. It said that they were very resilient. And I knew that that's what was going to happen, because you can look around and ask somebody, what did you do when you were 20 years old? I was a drunk, and then I decided when I was 25 that those 6 kids that I have, I needed to take care of, that kind of thing. So I saw resilience all around me, and I knew that that's what I was going to see. But they didn't like that for a couple different reasons. Well, the first reason was because they were afraid it was going to be negative. But the other thing was they were afraid it was going to be positive. And if it was positive, right now they can get funding from the federal government to fight alcoholism and depression and all of these things. They're getting special funding for that. But if I say that they're resilient, if I can show something positive about them, they're going to lose their funding. That was the worry. The worry. So it had to do with money. It had to do with negative attitudes, and it had to do with money. It was really kind of a tragic situation. But you're absolutely correct. Anything that has to do with psychology, and I was talking about suicide. I was saying that if we can show these people, if we can show the kids that they're resilient, then they can see a light at the end of the tunnel, rather than like teenagers are. If everything's black today, then everything's going to be black for the rest of their lives. So then they off themselves. But if they could see light at the end of the tunnel, we can show them that they're resilient. then potentially we could prove that they're not. That there's no reason, that there is a reason not to commit suicide. Because things will get better, potentially. So you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. So psychology, it's a tough one. It's a tough one. So sometimes they don't want you to research anything negative, and sometimes they don't want you to research anything positive. So you're absolutely correct. IRB is a tough one. And I went up against, I passed the IRB for my parent organization. And I passed IRB without any problem. But then when I took it to the tribal IRB, they rejected it. They just threw it out. They said, there's nothing, there's no way you can ever do this research. We've had too much research done on this. So you're absolutely right. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk about my own situation. Anyway, that's why I'm not still up in Montana. I got kicked out of the state. Along with gambling has come attempts at prohibition. In India in 1000 BC, they tried to prohibit gambling. During the Roman Empire, it was only for the aristocracy. Louis IX of France in 1255 tried to stop gambling. Henry VIII, the famous philanderer of England, he tried to ban it. And during the Victorian era in the United States, the reality is that there was no gambling in the United States. It was illegal. During the Victorian era, in the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, they decided that gambling was satanic, that it was the devil's something, playground or whatever. So there was no gambling in the United States. There was no legal gambling in the United States at all. If you wanted to gamble, you had to leave the country. That's one of the things that happened in Cuba. We controlled Cuba. Our businesses controlled Cuba, and that was our playground. We would go down to Cuba to gamble. We'd go down to prostitution, of course, is illegal in the United States, but we would go down there to have sex with other people. So it became our playground. In essence, it became our playground. So in the 1950s and 1960s, 1970s, no gambling in the United States at all. 1980s, during the Reagan administration, they started gambling on the Seminole Reservation down in Florida. They started playing bingo for money. And the federal government had to decide whether they were going to uphold the Volstead Act, that was part of the Volstead Act, or whether they were going to allow them to gamble. And they decided that since they were their own country, they were the Seminole, that the federal government wouldn't stop them from gambling. So that was the beginning of gambling in the United States. And then people like Donald Trump said, hey, it's not any fair that you're letting these Indians have all the revenue from all the gambling. So at that point they decided that they would change the rules, change the laws, but each state has their own laws. So Donald Trump, and this is one of the problems that Donald Trump has with you guys, is the fact that the federal government doesn't tax your casinos like they tax anybody else's casinos. So he has tried to buy into Indian casinos, and he has been rejected, either by the tribe or by the federal government, because he was taking too much off the top. So normally with these Indian casinos, the question is who owns the casino? So when we're talking about Fire Rock, does your tribe own the casino? And it would be very interesting for you to find out whether your tribe actually owns that casino. There's a casino up on Fort Belknap, and the casino up on Fort Belknap is owned by the Chickasaw tribe. As curious as that is, now how can that be? Well, there's gambling all over Oklahoma. It's legal in Oklahoma. So we've got the Chickasaw tribe with their own casinos. We've got the Choctaw with their own casinos. We've got the 5 civilized tribes, and they've all got their own casinos in Oklahoma. And they have made so much money now that they're branching out to other. And of course, this is one of the complaints. Look, we've got these Indians in Oklahoma, and they're making all this money. So why don't they? They're Indians, so why don't they help other Indians? And of course, that was the argument for like 20 years. Then all of a sudden, these guys decided that they would become Donald Trump and spread the wealth around. So guess what happens with all the profits from the Fort Belknap Reservation? The casino is making a profit. So where do those profits go? Back to the tribe? Back to the Fort Belknap people? The Belknappers? Goes to the Chickasaw. They take the money right off the top. So they always make a profit. And if there isn't a profit made at that casino, it's the Fort Belknap tribes that suffer, as interesting as that is. Anyway, okay, so my point was that during the Victorian era, there was no gambling in the United States. So in the 1950s, when I was a child, and in the 1960s, when I was a teenager, and in the 1970s, when I was an adult, there was no gambling in the United States until the 1980s. By that time, I was a middle-aged man, and so to me, it's normal, it's natural for there to be no gambling in all of these places. Each state controls their own gambling. So the state of Indiana, there are no casinos in the state of Indiana, but there are casinos on the Ohio River on the banks of the state of Indiana. They are anchored to the Indiana shore. And those are the only casinos in the state. There's no gambling in Indianapolis or in East Chicago. There's no gambling. But, there are no Indians in Indiana. However, there's a tribe of Miami that are trying to establish a reservation. It's not really a reservation. It's tribal lands in Indiana so they can open the casino. I know, this is really kind of funny. There's a lady by the name of Teresa LaFramboise. She's a big researcher. And if you do research with American Indians, you're going to see Teresa's name. Well, Teresa is from Wabash. She's from like 20 miles north of where I'm from. And I knew Teresa. Teresa and I were the same age. And I kind of knew Teresa. I saw her from time to time before she became an Indian. And now Teresa, if you see pictures of Teresa, so I ran into her from time to time. I never dated her, it's not that kind of a deal. But, and she was, anyway, she used to run around with one of my ex-wives. So then she went to the University of Oklahoma, and all of a sudden Teresa became a Miami Indian out of Indiana. Of course, there's like a list of 125 names, and LaFramboise is one of those names. Anyway, so all of a sudden she became Indian. She dyed her hair black. She started wearing turquoise. I know, it's so bizarre. And she started doing all this research. So you can look her up. She's really kind of interesting. Teresa LaFramboise. She's got, there are videos with Teresa in it. It's really funny because she's got all this turquoise on. You're going, where'd that turquoise come from? You're a Miami Indian of Indiana, and you did all your research in Oklahoma, so where's all the turquoise coming from? Yeah, it's kind of funny. She's an interesting lady. Anyway, and it has to do with gambling. I mean, there was no Miami tribe of Indiana until they decided to try to open the casinos in Indiana. Gambling came to the United States with the British, but the corruption and the addictive behavior made the practice unpalatable, and it was banned. While it was banned in the East, as people moved across the Mississippi River, gambling was popular in the wild, wild, wild West, and that's where you guys are. So potentially, since Arizona and New Mexico were not states until 1912, potentially you could do just about anything you kind of wanted to do. And that's what happened. So there was gambling here, but there wasn't gambling anywhere else. Infected by the same corruption, the Victorian morality, by 1910, it again was gone. And one of the things that you had to do in Arizona and New Mexico in order to become states was give up your gambling. And of course, that's what happened. That's how you became states. Gambling didn't return until the 1970s. Since then, Atlantic City and Las Vegas have become gambling meccas, and Indian casinos have changed gambling attitudes, bringing in more money than those two cities combined. And that's one of the reasons why That's one of the reasons why Donald Trump wanted to buy into your gambling casinos, because you guys make more money than the other casinos. One of the reasons is because people like to go to Indian casinos. Now, why in the world would they like to go to Indian casinos? What's the difference between an Indian casino and the Taj Mahal in Atlantic City, which is closed now, or someplace in Las Vegas? Why would you want to go to an Indian casino? As it turns out, the overhead at those other casinos is much higher than it is at an Indian casino. Because you guys aren't trying to make as much money. These guys are trying to be billionaires. And that's how Donald Trump made his billions and billions of dollars. He pretends it's from his golf courses. No, it's not. How much money does it cost to play golf? No, he's making all of his money from casinos. Now, of course, they're all closed. But the overhead, of course, these guys are just chipping the money off the top. So any profits they make, they get the first cut. They get the first pile of money. So all these people that own casinos, especially in Las Vegas and formerly in Atlantic City, are billionaires. They're all billionaires. But how many tribes do you know that are billionaires? Well, there's one group up in Minneapolis, and every member of the tribe's a millionaire. But other than that, you guys pay out better than the other casinos. And that's the reason people want to go to Indian casinos. And that's why you make so much money. There are 2 states in the United States that do not have gambling, and they are Utah and Hawaii, which is kind of curious. Because Utah certainly isn't a destination, but Hawaii is. I mean, a lot of people go to Hawaii just because it's paradise. It's the same temperature every day. Compulsive gambling, like any other addiction, comes in 2 forms. Problem gambling and pathological gambling. Problem gambling is gambling behavior that causes problems in an individual's life, either psychologically, physically, sociologically, or vocationally. They lose their job, they lose their friends, they lose their friends and family. Of course, it's a very relatively negative lifestyle, so potentially their health suffers, and of course psychologically they can't control the behavior. Pathological gambling is gambling behavior that is persistent and continual and significantly disrupts all aspects of an individual's life. The real difference between problem and pathological gamblers is often time and money. Problem gamblers can't afford to spend as much time and don't have the money to gamble as they want. They average losses of $3,000 per year. Pathological gambler spends far more time gambling and averages losses of $11,000 a year. The average debt for women entering Gamblers Anonymous is $60,000. They owe that money. They owe that money to kind of sketchy people. So pathological gambling is dangerous. If you lose money, you have to pay that money back. You have to pay that money somehow. And these people want their money. They live for the money. The average debt for men entering Gamblers Anonymous is $100,000. So how long would it take me to make $100,000? Well, I make about $50,000 a year. So I'd have to work for 2 years without spending any money, and that means I couldn't live in my Hogan house. I'd have to live out on the running trail. And I couldn't eat anything. I wouldn't have any food to eat. Oh. So let's say 3 years, and then I could live in my house and find some food somewhere. Studies show that problem and pathological gamblers lose 10 to 20 times as much as the non-problem gamblers. In a study in Connecticut, 47% of the casino patrons were problem or pathological gamblers, even though they only comprised 5% of the population. So they lost 40% of the revenue, or they represented 47% of the revenue. In Minnesota in 1993, it was discovered that 2% of the population generated 63% of the state gambling revenues. 2% represented 63% of their gambling revenues. Harvard Medical School studies estimated that 125 million people in the United States gamble. 2,200,000 of these individuals are pathological gamblers. 5,300 300,000 of these, 5,300,000 of these individuals are problem gamblers. This didn't take into account the 1,100,000 adolescent pathological gamblers. So where in the world, it's against the law for them to gamble. So how in the world are these 1,100,000 kids gambling? It's against the law for them to gamble. They can't go into a casino and gamble. So how are they gambling? Online, exactly. And they have become addicted to it. The male compulsive gamblers outnumber female compulsive gamblers by 2 to 3 times. So men are, there's something wrong. We knew that there was something wrong with men, didn't we? We knew that, and now we know they can't stop gambling. This may be changing with the increase of casinos and slot machines, as women are more likely to use gambling to escape depression, trauma, or relationship problems. In Clinton, Iowa, where I live now, or I don't live in Clinton, I actually live in Lost Nation, but my daughter lives in Clinton. There's a huge casino. It's called Wild Rose Casino. And if you go in there at any time of day, there are people throwing money into slot machines. Well, they don't actually throw money, they just stick their credit cards in there. And most of them are old women, older women, well, they're not really retired, they were housewives before, and now in order to, this is the only excitement they have in their lives, is gambling. And so if you, the floor has all these slot machines, and all these women are playing just tons and tons of money. And of course, they all know each other. So if one of them hits a jackpot, of course the bell rings, and everybody, all these old women run over to see how much money she made. So it's fun to watch these individuals. Stupid. Anyway, okay. How am I doing? Okay. Pathological gamblers tend to have other addictions. 25 to 63% of pathological gamblers have other behavioral or substance addictions. One study found that 73% of pathological gamblers had alcohol problems. The same study found that 38% of pathological gamblers had a drug problem. 60% smoked, 50% had mood disorders, 41% had anxiety disorders, 60% had personality disorders, antisocial personality disorder. This is an individual, while the individual that shot up Las Vegas, that killed 58 people, that shot all those people at the concert, this was an individual that never talked to anybody. So was he did he have schizoform disorder? Did he have schizoaffective disorder? I don't know, but the only person he ever really interacted with was his girlfriend, and he hadn't had sex with her for a year and a half before he shot up Las Vegas. So this is an individual that doesn't interact with people. He has a personality disorder. Potentially he had a personality disorder. Fascinating stuff. And he shot up Las Vegas. Does this scare you? I'm not going to be the one shooting the place up. Even though I'm the only white guy in the room, I'm not going to be the person shooting the place up, because I'm too outgoing in order. But if we look at all of these people that shoot places up, the guy that killed all the people in the church, he never interacted with anybody except his family. The kid down in Florida, he interacted. He did a lot of things with guns, but he didn't really interact with people. So this may be something that we see more and more in the future. This reclusiveness, this schizo, they're at the border of schizophrenia and normalcy. And since we don't want to diagnose anybody with schizophrenia, because then we have to give them all kinds of horrible medications that destroy their brains, we're letting these people stand there on the abyss for an extended length of time, and then they go off the deep end. They go into the abyss, and instead of us being able to control their behavior, now all of a sudden they've shot 17 people in Florida, 58 people in Florida, in Las Vegas, and 27 people in Texas. Anyway, we have to stop right here. We'll pick this up next time. I will finish this chapter next time. I'll stop telling so many stories. You guys are gonna have to deal with this, I'm not gonna have to deal with it, I'm too old. I remember when there was only 3 television stations. Now you guys can watch just all the television you want. You can go on Netflix and by God, you can binge watch. Who's talking to me the other? Oh, Sarah was talking to me last night. She was saying, well, you have Netflix, don't you? I said, no. Well, this weekend I binge watched some television show. Really? Oh, she's